"513" is the story of a lone pilot who finds his ship sabotaged and drifting disabled through an asteroid field, unsure if he should trust the mysterious woman on the other side of his radio. With this short, I wanted to look at technology, how it can both help us and hurt us in new and surprising ways. I think all of us feel like we're living in an age of disinformation, and it's funny because technology, I think, is one of the things that makes it really hard to know who we can trust. We're more connected than we've ever been, and yet in many ways we're also very isolated from each other, because in addition to those genuine human connections, there's also a lot of people and groups out there seeking to manipulate us through technology.
How do I know I can trust you?
Honestly, you don't.
The sketch effect in 513 is actually an evolution of something I've been playing with for a while now, on a few different shorts. I actually found this effect in an app on my phone called Apple Clips several years ago. It's called Comic Book, and there are a few different variations of it in the app. And I kind of fell in love with it right away, because it reminds me of a couple of my favorite rotoscoped movies, Waking Life and A Scanner Darkly, both by Richard Linklater. When I first started doing it, I actually had to film the footage on like a nice DSLR style camera, edit that footage on my laptop, send the footage to my phone, then send the footage back to my laptop. Now thankfully the effect is built right into Final Cut 10, and it's a lot easier to work with that way. I find it creates a really neat, surreal, dreamlike atmosphere. I also love how it's imperfect, it's jumpy, it's jittery, it almost feels hand-drawn. Because I can apply the effect in different layers, I can really dial the style into a specific feel and tone for each short. So for example, in two of our early sketch effect shorts, P2017 and Wired, I wanted it to feel very sketchy, black and white, kind of rough and tumble. In Blank Page, we were working with a larger team, we had more precise camera work in that short, and so I wanted it to feel more like carefully drawn pages of a sketchbook. In SOMEWHEN, I started experimenting with color, and I wanted that short to have kind of an 80s cartoon vibe. For 513, I really wanted it to be vibrant and colorful. Bright neon and primary colors. I was kind of aiming for the style of a Love, Death, Robot short, because it's one of my favorite new shows. I also wanted the lines in the frame to be very jumpy and disconcerting to match the tumultuous emotional state of the pilot as he's going through these events. To me, the core of the story of 513 is about digging past technology to find humanity in these characters, and the sketch effect is another layer on top of that. It builds distance between the audience and the characters and makes them feel unreal, but hopefully, if I did my job right, in watching the short, we bridge that distance and we start to feel for them more as people by the end. For the VFX, I used a couple of specific packs, mainly Soul from Film Crux and Astra from Big Films. The exterior world is sort of built out of layers. Both of these provide PNGs and movies with transparency effects so that you can put them on top of each other to sort of build out one planet into a whole system. So in this case, the moon, the ring around the moon, and then the asteroid belt that the pilot is flying towards. The ship itself is actually a miniature model, and because this started life as a 48-hour film project, we actually built it very hastily over the single weekend. And then I was able to get most of the shots with it using macro lenses to do close-ups of this miniature. For the cockpit, we have just very basic touches. I wanted it to feel like driving a car at night where only the information you need to know is illuminated. So just a hint of the structure, the chair, the controls, his cockpit monitors. I also wanted it to feel like it sinks into the darkness so that when everything in the ship turns off, it feels very claustrophobic. The sound design was one of my favorite parts of this short. I'm a little biased because I've been a professional location sound mixer for 8 years, and I've also done the sound design for most of my shorts for even longer than that. For the vacuum of space, technically there wouldn't be any sound because there's nothing for that sound to travel through. But as you've probably heard me say before if you watch these videos, good sound design and good filmmaking in general isn't necessarily about what's realistic, it's about what feels right. I didn't want space to be very bass heavy because the cockpit already has a lot of that with its engine rumble. So for space, we went with more of an ethereal drone. Kind of like wind underwater. I wanted it to sound mysterious, dangerous, but also kind of beautiful in a haunting way. For the interior of the spacecraft, there's several different layers to the sound. There's the deep rumble of the engines, like they're vibrating through the ship's hull. There's also the hiss of oxygen, the electronic crackle of the screens and his interface. Having all those layers to the sound was important because that way we can strip them out one by one as the spacecraft shuts down in stages. Finally, we're left with just the pilot and his breathing in the darkness. It's again that idea of moving past the technology, past the machinery, until we're left with just the human being at the heart of the story.
Sound in the short also acts as another layer separating the two characters from each other. Everything the woman says to the pilot is filtered through the fuzzy static of the radio, the buzz of the CRT monitor that he's looking at her on. It's about finding that genuine human connection both through the technology, the only way they're able to talk to each other is because of the technology, but also it is this wall between them. It's something that separates them. It's something that means that he's not sure he can trust her because she's so far away from him. This is also reflected in how the two characters talk to each other. They start off with their formal titles. Him as the spacecraft 513, her as Mission Control.
Hey, Mission Control, this is AMR 513 reporting.
And they end with their real names.
And 513?
Yeah.
I'm Chelsea.
Oscar.
I'll see you soon, Oscar.
But I also didn't want you to know until the very last moment of the short whether that connection was real or a manipulation. And if you want to find out, you'll have to check out the short. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a comment below.